We are less than a week away from the second Republican debate, and a new CNN poll of New Hampshire voters shows Vivek Ramaswamy on the rise, holding a slight lead over Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, and Ron DeSantis in the battle for second place. NBC's Dasha Burns sat down with Ramaswamy for an exclusive interview at his Ohio headquarters and joins us this morning. Dasha, always great seeing you. You heard more about his family's immigration story. What'd you learn?
Yeah, Jose, and Ramaswamy is actually behind me right now giving his first speech in his home state right now. And he's been touting on the campaign trail his business experience, the fact that he is a political outsider, that he's a businessman, not a politician. Where have we heard that before? And the way that he's been approaching this campaign trail is reminiscent of the way former President Trump did in 2015 and 2016. Also in the way that he has taken some hardline policy positions like he has on immigration. This has been something you've been talking about a lot today. And look, one of his stances is that he plans to, if elected, to deport not only undocumented immigrants, but also the American-born children of those undocumented immigrants who right now, under the 14th Amendment, are American citizens. And when we talked about that, Jose, one of the other things he's been talking about on the campaign trail is his own family's immigration story. He's been talking about how his parents took the citizenship test, and that's something that he wants to see young Americans, those who are graduating from high school, take a civics test similar to the citizenship test that immigrants take in order to become citizens of this country, in order to vote, right? He wants those 18 to 24 to take that kind of a test. But lately, he's been switching from talking about his parents taking that test to his mother taking that test. And so when we sat down, because he's taking these hardline positions on immigration, I wanted to clarify his own family's immigration story. So take a listen to our exchange on that.
You've talked about your mother's experience with the citizenship test. You've also talked about having something similar for folks who graduate high school in order to vote, having a civics test similar to what your mother took. You've lately been talking on the campaign trail more about your mother than your father, and some folks have been asking questions, and I just want to be super clear. Did your father also take the citizenship test, and is your father a citizen?
He did not, and that's a choice that he has made for familial reasons, but my mother did, and I think that every immigrant who comes to this country in order to become a full voting citizen has to do the same. And I believe in being consistent about my policies where...
So your father is not a citizen of the United States?
He's not.
Okay. And your mother, when did your mom take the citizenship test? Was it before or after you were born?
After I was born.
After you were born. Okay.
After years of being in this, following the legal process of becoming a naturalized citizen, she followed it through the legal process.
And he says both of his parents came to this country legally, Jose. And it's important to get clarity on these issues because this is a candidate. You hear the applause behind me. I'm telling you, when he's in these rooms with voters, he is getting standing ovations after each one of his speeches. He's risen in the polls past experienced politicians very quickly. And again, reminiscent of what we saw from former President Trump in his first run for president. So a candidate that's important to pay attention to because with these policies, even with some of his controversial comments, he is gaining a lot of traction with the Republican base right now.
Dasha Burns in Ohio, thank you very much. And with us now to continue our conversation, Eddie Glaude, a distinguished professor of African-American Studies at Princeton University, and Matthew Dowd, chief strategist for the Bush-Cheney 2004 campaign. Both Eddie and Matthew are MSNBC political analysts. So, Matthew, just your reaction to this fascinating interview that Dasha carried out with Ramaswamy. Just your reaction to it first.
Well, Vivek has made a reputation of not for what's good for the goose is not good for the gander. I mean, that's clear in this case. He's become so anti-immigrant, and he's now discovered in the course of this, he has birthright citizenship basically in this, and he doesn't want that opportunities. He doesn't want the opportunities available to any other American that he doesn't deem worthy in this. And so I think Dasha is right that he has become the sort of new version of Trump. He says outrageous things. The Republican base Many of them seem to respond to it. And of course, he's taken an anti-immigrant tack, which is amazing with his family background.
Yeah, and Eddie, just your thoughts on that. I mean, and Matthew was talking about how, you know, he in his personal family his mother was able to become a citizen. He's clearly making a distinction there about that his family followed all the procedures. But we're still talking about it. He's still talking about deporting U.S.-born citizens who you know, I mean, Eddie, I mean, how do you explain this being a popular, possibly popular, with some elements of the voting public?
Right. Jose, it makes my blood boil, to be honest with you. I'm thinking, you know, this guy benefited from the Immigration Act of 1965, his family did. And he's taking a position around immigration that harkens back to the Johnson-Reed Immigration Act of 1924, which in effect was written by the KKK. And, you know, this is part and parcel of his shtick. He is a beneficiary of social movements that open this society. And now he has the temerity to kind of take up these positions that actually cuts against what made his life possible. So it makes my blood boil, and we need to hold him to account as we address the bombast and the wild statements that he often makes.
Yeah, I mean, and Eddie, he is at least giving us his thoughts on certain comprehensive immigration policy, right? Which is something we don't hear from you know, a lot of the other candidates. Now, the former president did have something to say. Take a listen to this.
Will carry out the largest domestic deportation operation in American history. I will shift massive portions of federal law enforcement to immigration enforcement, including parts of the DEA, ATF, FBI, and DHS, all of them you know. And I'll make clear that we must use any and all resources needed to stop the invasion, including moving thousands of troops currently stationed overseas, guarding other people's borders. We guard other people's borders, but we don't guard our own.
So, Matthew, now we've heard one side saying one thing. I mean, you know, Ramaswamy and the former president saying something similar, but I guess a different version of it. Is this what passes for serious discussions on comprehensive immigration?
Well, that's a stretch of the word serious, obviously, in this. I mean, it's what passes for slogans. I mean, when Donald Trump rose in the polls and became the Republican nominee with basically 3 words, build the wall, which he never did. And of course, he never got Mexico to pay for it in this. He did that in his ride up the escalator, became the Republican nominee. And now Republicans, instead of showing any courage or any leadership, or any sense that immigrants founded and helped build this country, whether they were voluntary people into this country or involuntary people into this country, built the country. I mean, it's just the Republican Party. It's xenophobic. It harkens back to what happened in the 1840s and 1850s and 1880s, whether it was Chinese, whether it was Japanese, whether it was Jewish, whether it was my ancestors Irish, whether it was Germans, whatever it happens to be. It's the new sort of way to say we're real Americans and they're not. And that seems to be popular among the Republican base.
Yeah, and Eddie, I mean, it's so important to kind of always bring it back to what really is fundamental. We have to remember that we're talking about men, women, and children, many of whom have been through the most extreme hardships imaginable in their homeland and then trying to reach the United States. I just want you to listen to our colleagues at Telemundo talked with a young child who was traveling with his family on the dangerous journey to the U.S. through Mexico. Just listen, if you would, to what he said he saw.
En una parte que pasamos, estaba así en el río, estaba la mitad del cuerpo de una persona así. Siento como tristeza. Le quiero pedir a Dios que no pase más nada, que ya más nadie se caiga del tren, que nadie se muera.
So he just talks about how he hopes that no one else has to die. He says he saw dead people. People were falling off the train and dying. This is a little child talking about what he saw on the way to the U.S. Eddie, I just don't know. I mean, is there a way to have a productive, civil conversation about these issues, which, in the final analysis, do come back to men, women, and children?
I hope so. Decency seems to be in short supply these days. Cruelty in abundance. People not seeing the humanity of young children and men and women seeking opportunity makes it difficult, Jose. But we have to also tell the truth. We can't have a civil discussion if we're not telling the truth. Immigration policy, the history of immigration policy in the United States, reveals that we have not always been a nation of simply laws and principles. That there has been, and you can see it in the history of immigration law, this idea that America is a white nation. And what we're experiencing here, we get it every single election cycle. Caravan, the threat, right? What we're experiencing right now is this fear over demographic shifts. And this is just one angle of that debate. This is the great replacement. It's not just about black and white. This is part of that debate. Unless we understand what is underneath the so-called crises, the so-called panics around immigration, we can't have a discussion that centers that child, because we won't tell ourselves the truth about what's driving all of this in the first place.
Eddie Glaude and Matthew Dowd,